Hey everyone, Internet PCS book reader here. Today I want to talk about Manufacturing Consent, the Political Economy of the Mass Media by Edward S. Herman and Noam Chomsky. Often when people make a mistake or something bad, our initial reaction is to try to justify it, excusing ourselves out of taking accountability. Under a certain threshold, it is something very human. It's a mistake that in the best case scenario, we can learn something from after we apologize. But after a certain threshold, it turns from something very human to something very inhuman that there is nothing to learn from except maybe from outsiders like us, an understanding that some people are just pure evil. And historically, Western or pro-Western mainstream media unfortunately often did not convey the level of atrocities that have gone to that inhuman level that conveys how bad or not bad the reality of the real situation were. Because of various reasons like advertising that this book covers, they have a deep-seated bias in reporting events, and oftentimes that came out either as downplaying an event or over-exaggerating an event using various means. This propaganda model has been around for as long as countries exist, but Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky coined the term manufacturing consent for it. With the current longest Holocaust that is still ongoing in Palestine done by Israel, we've seen the length that the mainstream media can go to defend atrocities. And just like how the suffering of the Palestinians is not something new that just started with the genocide, the manufacturing consent done by Western legacy media is also not something new. When America invaded Iraq, for example, with their war against terror bullshit, when America invaded Vietnam with even less justification, and then of course the other many atrocities committed during the Cold War, every Western media ran stories that supported their country's atrocities. The case with Mehmet Ali Akska, for example, a Turkish that come from a well-known right-wing fascist group, the Grey Wolf, was captured when he tried to assassinate Pope John Paul II. But despite belonging to a Turkish right-wing group, when he claimed during his captivity that he was ordered to assassinate the Pope by Bulgaria and Soviet KGB that uses left-wing ideology that contradict what Akka believed in, Western media ran with his story without checking any shred of evidence, which there is none. No evidence at all besides what he said during captivity by the state of Italy, who at that time hated Bulgaria, Soviet, and the growing Communist Party at Italy. Mehmet of course lied. He will change his story multiple times, and not only that, Bulgaria and Soviet opened up their archive for outside investigation to clear their name, and this investigation is led by Alan Weinstein from America, who did not find anything that even slightly suggests that there is any plan to assassinate the Pope. And not only that, later on the classified report from CIA has found clear evidence that their organization during Reagan era was compromised and politicalized to support Reagan's anti-Soviet presidential campaign. But of course, the mainstream media was silent about this. They did not print or air the change in the assassin story or the result of the deep dive investigation to Bulgaria and Soviet done by themselves or any of the declassified CIA report by their own people as intensely as the KGB is the mastermind of the assassin story, simply because KGB is their enemy and that matters more than the truth. This keeps happening because these mainstream news media are almost all owned by the same parent companies, and while they are all guilty of spreading this type of indoctrination to the American people, for this video I want to focus on the worst of this, which is the New York Times, because even right now it has done so much damage in spreading misinformation. Let's start this example by their article from 1966 that praised Suharto's presidency in Indonesia. This is despite him being a known murderous dictator that has silenced, killed millions of people in Indonesia when he took over the country from the elected President Sukarno, and have killed hundreds of thousands more when he attacked Timor-Leste. They are still trying to paint him as a complex and controversial leader even up to 2017, despite on top of all the death that he have killed, his so-called leadership also breaks Indonesia's economy because of his corruption. Later on in 1984, they are downplaying US attempt at interfering with Iran election where they failed because Iran democratically elected their own leader instead of the one so obviously backed and funded by America. And that is not the end of US interference there. In 1986, the New York Times again were downplaying the America-Contra affair where in the title they did not even put America there despite the affair is America during Reagan presidency smuggling weapons to the Contra group rebel in Iran, a group that they will consider terrorists once they got into power in Iran. Also from the 80s to the 90s, the New York Times helped spread the Nicaraguan government lies that there are rebels trying to stop voters from voting, Meanwhile, the Nicaraguan state mass murder of civilians who don't want to vote for the state or worse his competitors was not mentioned at all because the US are backing its current leader. Meanwhile, once the competitor Ortega won, the newspaper media suddenly can't stop talking about how bad he is, despite his actions are far less compared to the previous government that is silencing and killing its own citizens. As a result of this kind of coverage by mainstream news media that most Americans are still using to find the truth, the country have only gotten more and more ideologically right-wing. This is why people who is in the habit of lying like Joe Biden can be president. This is why Donald Trump can be president twice. This is why even people from America that claim to be left-wing can be found taking a very right-wing stance. It's because this kind of coverage creates an illusion that America is the good guy in the world. It gives its people who are not aware historically what their country represents in a good versus evil story a kind of main character syndrome. I mean, their mainstream media has almost never made an article that tells the American people that in Vietnam War, they are not the good guys. It is never pointed out that America is the one who split the country into two, then militarily invade them and called it a war. And even before they invaded, America funded France to recolonize Vietnam, and after the invasion failed, they punished the civilians there with sanctions and embargo, literally starving them to death. It is beyond evil, but most Americans are not even aware of it. This is because the propaganda system like manufacturing consent is in its creation and its practice breeds right-wing sentiments, especially since it is often used to hide the failure of capitalism and also to exaggerate any bad events that is happening in other countries that is less capitalistic than them. A single murder in Police that was solved in a matter of days somehow had way more news coverage compared to mass murder in Guatemala. This is because Police at that point is not their ally, meanwhile America is funding the genocide in Guatemala. There is mass murder there that are so well documented. The group called GAM was found there to help the victims of the people getting disappeared, and they too are murdered. One of the founders, Maria Rosario, was killed along with her brothers and her 2-year-old son. There are bite marks on her breast and her 2-year-old son's fingernail was pulled. It is torture done to literal baby. But the female leader of a human support group, her brother and her 2-year-old child being tortured and murdered did not go into Western news at all. They did this in order to pick and choose which ones get to be victims in the eyes of the American people. If your country refuses to lick the imperialistic boots, then any crime happening in your country will be exaggerated to no end. A single murder is suddenly a crime against humanity in the eyes of the mainstream media. Every coverage will try to make sure to point out how bad your country is. But if you are willing to look deep enough into their asses that your tongue came out of their mouth, they will downplay whatever atrocity you committed, or they will even turn a blind eye to it. No one in the Western Hemisphere will ever have to know what happened. And if right now some of you realize that sounds familiar, that is because it is not a unique event that so rarely happens, but a repeat pattern of behavior that is still currently ongoing, with the current most obvious example is Palestine. But because they kept on trying to drown out actual atrocities by over-reporting on less atrocious incidents to make themselves look better, it resulted in making a lot of Americans think that their country is so much better compared to all the other countries out there, even though it is a country that is ranked as the worst in many aspects of quality of life. This cannot be a one-time mistake obviously, because they keep on doing it over and over and over and over again. They have been doing it since the 60s and even earlier than that. Then they continue to do it every day, every week, every month and every year until we arrive at 2025 and they are still doing it. You could argue that they are not aware that they were doing it and they were misled by their governments, but based on their reporting on other news, they are obviously people that are capable of reporting the truth. The obvious answer is that they are doing it on purpose. I mean, there has even been reports from whistleblowers that confirm that the mainstream news editorial system knew exactly what they are doing by banning the use of some words in their reporting, which again, as an example here, let's use the New York Times again, which has always been so quick to report Israelites without checking any evidence of the country claim, yet banned the use of words like ethnic cleansing or even genocide in the middle of ongoing ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinians. And when further investigation was done on why this kind of practice is happening, we can quickly figure out that a lot of people in power there have reason to want the Palestinians eradicated and replaced by Israel. And thankfully for us, because of accessibility to worldwide communication, more and more people can hear directly from the victims themselves, and there are more and more independent journalists that don't have the biases that mainstream media have and is willing and eager to report the truth, even if it's a hard truth that makes their country looks bad. You want to learn more about how mainstream media is used as foreign policy disinformation? This book is a must read, and people who have not read them yet are not having a political discourse, they are merely gossiping. I give this a 5. What do you think? Let me know if I missed anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. Let's spot it. See ya.